I was both excited and apprehensive about today's project. We'll be restoring this vintage Dayton table I received from my grandparents' estate. Now, I struggled to find production dates, so if you have any, I'd really appreciate it. Feel free to drop a comment with the information. We'll start by using a random orbital sander with 40 grit sandpaper to remove the old lacquer and stain. Next, hand sand using 80 grit sandpaper. Going around, I scratched the side. I thought it would be impossible not to, but I only did one, and it's going to result in me sanding every one of these octagonal sides. Because of the flat edge, I chose to get out the mouse sander with 40 grit sandpaper. Switch to the random orbital with a finer 120 grit. Now bump it up to the soft 220 grit. Back to hand sanding with a very fine 220 grit. In order to showcase the beautiful grain, I opted to run the random orbital with a very fine 320 grit. Before going further, take the time to remove dust. I like to vacuum for the larger bits. And then tack cloth for the stubborn dust, but you may use mineral spirits on a rag if you prefer. Apply a liberal amount of pre-stained wood conditioner using a plain chip brush. Allow it to penetrate for about 5 minutes, then wipe off the excess with a clean rag. After an hour, I lightly hand sand with the 220 grit before tack clothing to remove the sanding dust. If you've watched my videos before, you'll know I favor the control of staining with pads over a brush for many applications. Depending on the level of stain, let it penetrate between 5 and 15 minutes before wiping away the excess with a clean cloth, making sure to go along with the wood's grain.
Oh wow, how is it turning out?
Check her out!
Oh.
As usual, I did the polyurethane, sanding, tack cloth, followed by a second coat of polyurethane for that added dimension and protection. However, even after gentle feathering with the foam brush, streaking could be seen at eye level with reflective lighting. A little bit frustrated, I masked the edges in preparation for spray-on polyurethane, thinking it may level the uneven areas. Now anyone who's used spray-on knows the coats are exceedingly thin, so I applied multiple passes. In the fading sunlight, it appeared to be doing a pretty good job. But under better lighting, brush strokes were still clearly visible. Using some 800 grit equivalent 3M pads, I desperately attempted to buff out the imperfections. But it didn't work. Like a painter unsatisfied with his masterpiece, I pulled out the random orbital sander with 220 grit to clear cut the polyurethane. I followed that with a light hand sanding using 320 grit and the tack cloth. New to the arsenal, I applied wipe-on polyurethane using a staining pad. I was very impressed with the effortless flow and predictable coverage of this fluid. Between coats, lightly sand and tack cloth. The second coat was just as pleasurable as the first. But how would it dry? Simply stunning. A side-by-side comparison illustrates the brilliant results. Like and subscribe as you see fit, and I'll see you next time.